Hello, Maker Central. My name is Ian Davis, or how I've kind of become, known at this event as, that guy over there with a robotic hand. But don't look at him. So, not a bad thing. It's just when you wear something like this on the daily, it kind of has to be, part of your persona. If I was missing a lower limb or something, you had to wear long pants, and you'd just be a guy that walks around with a limp. But with something like this, it is in front of everybody. You will be seen with that. So it's just part of your new identity once you figure that out. So this actually wasn't my first, I guess, foray into building prosthetics. When so I'm old. I graduated in 91, 92. The high school that I went to, you have to do what's called a senior project. So you build a physical project, you write a term paper, and you give a presentation. Kind of like this, but a little smaller venue. What I did is I designed and developed a fully ambulatory robotic arm using myoelectronics. Now, the electronics that are available now aren't even in the same world as what was available back then. Back then you'd go to, what was a Radio Shack. Oh, I didn't start my live feed. Did I? Okay. There we go. So I can make a video too. So you'd go to a Radio Shack that had hardly anything because they were slowly starting to turn into a cell phone shop at that period. And you generally take a 40-in-1 electronics, an 80-in-1, or whatever they had in stock in one electronics kit, cannibalize that into making motor drivers, controllers, whatever. Add some 555 timer chips, some darlingtons, make some type of stepper. Because like now, you order it up on Amazon or from, well, I don't know where you guys get it from here. We get it from, Adafruit in the States. But it's all kind of just plug and play back. Back when I was doing it, you'd take the breadboard, you start on the, the darlingtons, just to make anything move. You do that a couple times. First time, letting the smoke out. Second time, hopefully you get some motion. So now it's just adding a bit of code, and poof, you're almost guaranteed motion, which is amazing. For people coming up now, I mean, it's just amazing technology is available. So for me, let's see, arduino. So with me doing that project in high school, that was kind of a look to the future of what would be coming down the road for me. So after high school, I started a machine shop. I did engineering, part design, that type of stuff. Worked for a trade, sheet metal, precision sheet metal. We did conveyor assemblies and that type of thing. Went to a 5-year apprenticeship program. Graduated in 3 years, had to teach for 2 years to make up for it because I was short on hours. And little did I know that was all prepping me for later in life doing this. So like when I went out on my own it was around 98, 99, I had bought my property, bought the shop, had just a starting of a machine shop, mill, lathe, just enough to be dangerous. I was doing Ermel iron structural steel, and that was awesome. Did pretty good financially. Then 2008 happened. Everything stopped. Moved to conveyors and automation. Again, prepping me for things later in life that I never even knew I'd be doing. Then, let's see, 16, 17, 17, I was snowboarding with my son, and coming down the mountain, a kid yard sailed in front of me. I heel-sided my board, fell flat on my back, and it was electricity from here down. I broke my back, 10, 11, 12, 4, 5, S1, and C2-3. Didn't know it, thought I had pulled a muscle, you ruptured a disc, something. They snowmobiled me back up to my truck, had to wait for my son to get done with snowboard lessons, spent the next 3 weeks, laying on the bathroom floor because it was flat and cold. Anytime I needed to get up, you tie a towel, cinch it around your waist, you hobble around. Eventually I got better. Didn't know that I had anything going on, but about 6 months later, I stopped healing completely from smallest cut or anything. Finally decided to go see a physician, and he's like, oh, I've seen your type before. You're hunting for pain pills. This is in the middle of the opioid crisis. I imagine you guys have the same thing over here. So they're really cracked down on the pain meds and stuff. So he starts doing blood tests, and he's like, oh, you have an unregulated production of monoclonal plasma in your system. And I'm like, well, that sounds a lot like cancer. He's like, well, I can't talk to you about it, but you have a meeting with oncology in a month. Well, I know what that word means, too. I think we should talk about it. He's like, well, I can't. So he hands me with all my paperwork. I sit in his parking lot for a half an hour, figure out what I got going on. It's like, oh, that doesn't look good. So I meet with oncology a month later, and they're like, well, you have 6 months. You know, you're 82% bone involved. You got about 6 months, and you won't be candidate for anything. You know, you'll be dead. So luckily, I get into, there's a research hospital half the country away in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's UAMS. And I met all of their criteria for a stem cell transplant trial. Got into that, spent a year in hospital, 4 rounds of 108 hours of continuous infusion, 7-drug triplet trial, and then did a melphalan autologous stem cell transplant. So basically they kill you and then a stem cell rescue to make it all better. Made it my 100 days, didn't die. And so then I'm trying to get my life back to normal because, you know, living in hospital, I mean, that was, you know, you go from 65 and sunny, I'm immortal, to you're going to die, to hospital for most of a year, and you're like, I just want to get back to my life. So a couple of months after I get out of hospital and I'm, you know, kind of getting wheels rolling, you know, because I had to shut the business down. Started taking on some projects. I drop a piece of metal on my hand. So part of multiple myeloma is it's a hematological bone cancer that eats away at your bones, your kidneys, your liver. So if I could get to the point of osteoporosis, it'd be an improvement. So, you know, broke my hand. Of course, immunocompromised, not healing. They go and they pin my fingers because, well, that's how you fix your hand. And then I get a site blood infection, bone infection, septicemia, gangrene, you're going to die. So nobody wants to touch me because I'm under 6 months outside of my stem cell. So I have to start searching for doctors and clinics that'll even touch me because, you know, they're afraid you're just going to die on the table. So go up there, find a doctor half a state away. She's like, you're not great, but, you know, I'll do with what you give me. So have the operation, they pin my fingers, go back home, 3 weeks later, come back up. She's like, ooh, that doesn't look really good. Don't plan on going back home tomorrow because you're scheduled for emergency surgery tomorrow. Oh. And they take 1. So then I go back home, a couple weeks later, come back up. Ooh, you are not looking good. And they take 2. Go home, come back, and 3. This will be your last surgery. What's that mean? Well, you aren't healing anymore. This will be your last surgery. So I'm like, well, is that, you know, because nobody's giving me any real idea of what we're doing. Thankfully, you know, it was just disarticulation at the metacarpal ends. But as a maker, what are you without your hands? So now all of a sudden, you know, I've shut my shop down, which was my entire identity, and now I don't have 2 functioning hands. And so now I start making application through insurance, you know, for getting a prosthetic device, just kind of anything that's available. And my customer service representative sent me several letters that were, you know, with your policy, we consider fingers are considered a luxury. Have a nice day. As they're typing that out with their fingers. The irony was just, it was awesome. So made, you know, 3 or 4 appeals to the state and through the insurance, you know, where they would cover it off of Medicare and Medicaid, they had to cover it with private insurance. So eventually they did buy me a device, but by that time I was 6-8 months down the road and already becoming okay with the idea that they were not going to provide me a device. Well, so 25 years prior to this, I had been doing product design, engineering, and manufacturing. So switching over to, you know, this type of thing, super easy. You know, it's just a smaller scale of product. So by the time I got to the OSER clinic in Dublin, Ohio, I already had a functioning device. They're looking at me going, well, what are you doing here? What you have is on par or better than what we're able to offer you, and it's mechanical. So meet with them. I'm like, well, I'm kind of trying to do this as kind of an impromptu job interview. What I'd love to do is, work in my shop at home, and when it's time for show and tell, I hop on an airplane, show and tell. You guys make it into a product, and here we go. Then COVID happened. So all during lockdown, lockdown didn't really affect me because I work alone in the shop. So I go to the shop in the morning, work all day, come home, now designing stuff for what I'm doing. Finally get something that I'm comfortable to wear, and I'm sharing it with some of my friends that live outside the state. Some in like Tacoma, Washington. It's about 5 hours north. What would that be? So 300 miles north, because Americans describe everything in time, which we do. Figured that. Or down in San Francisco, which is 7 hour, be 500 miles south. But I started sharing that on YouTube. Well, I had a couple of those videos go pretty viral. So now all of a sudden, I'm building prosthetic devices for myself and accidentally starting a YouTube channel. Well, all of a sudden I'm monetized, and I'm like, well, COVID sucks. I'm not able to make any real money. I might as well jump on the YouTube thing. So I do that, and I'm, doing the weekly upload. Hey, this is what I'm doing. Now I can not only just open and close the hand, but now I can splay the fingers. Because originally that was kind of just a Zuzu. I don't know how much I'll really use it, but yeah, it's cool enough. Maybe I'll do something with it. And I find that it is such a valuable feature that, from about 12 hands ago, that just became a standard feature for any of my designs. Nobody else is doing that in that sector. It's all rigid mount, and either the fingers curl in a spherical motion for, like a spherical grasp, or they're in a flat plane. Well, each one has their own benefits, but I found that, a spherical grasp with a wiffle tree gives you a super compliant grip. So, let's see, I've already talked to, so then from the OSIR Institute, I get a contact for Hugh Gill, who is the director of R&D for OSIR. Have a couple Zoom meetings with him. Really impressed with the project. They know all about me. They've seen my YouTube videos. They're like, hey, we got to do something. I've become an actual topic, at their monthly meetings. So it looks like they have some real interest in doing something with me. So couple models later, it's kind of feeling like I got a product starting, and I'm like, okay, well, we can probably do something with this. Another Zoom meeting. He's like, if you come up with something that's, a mechanical grip patterns, so you're able to individually control, so the common grip patterns are all open and closed, all open, all closed, pinky curled, ring pinky curled, precision tripod grip, and then index. Those are your common grip patterns. So I'm like, well, I can come up with something mechanical to do that. So do that. That's the 158 hand. Has a bit of horology on the side of it. It's 4 cams, 6 positions, and every time you go from the 0 plane down, it cycles that cam 60 degrees and then locks and unlocks the fingers to give you the different grip patterns. Works great, too complicated. Have a Zoom meeting. This is great. Gets the attorneys and the accountants involved. They're like, really, we would love to work with you. Not enough ROI for you. Even though, this product is awesome, and I've been using it as a daily driver for, a couple months now. Really showing its utility, and they're like, there's not enough money in it for us. So design another one, simplify the device. Really love what you're doing, but maybe if you went at it on your own and you went and proved the market viability. So I'm like, what are you guys here for? That's you're the ones that are in clinic. So that's where I am now. So I've moved from this one to, now I have just, like 3 or 4 days before the show, I finished this one up to the point where I can actually start using it. Yesterday, this was the one that I was wearing around all day. So open and close like normal with display. But now I can lock the fingers and unlock the fingers. So now I have mechanical grip patterns and, pretty slim, low part count. The other thing that I've done with this, because, obviously now I'm bringing this to market, not relying on OSIR or anything, is I've made, I've simplified everything, made it way more durable. I've also solved a big issue in prosthetics, that all of these parts are individually mounted to the socket. Well, if you're going to do it as a DIY kit, that introduces a bunch of issues, because if you don't get the placement of each one of those components exactly in the right spot, you only have about 20 thousandths between it's going to work and it's not going to work. So what I've done with this is all of the parts locate to the adjacent parts. So I've broken it up into minor assemblies and major assemblies. So the fingers themselves from the mounting rails forward is one assembly. Then you have the winder, then the gimbal and gaffney, and all of those bolt together and determine the proximal location, one to the next to the next. It's like, they're all their individual thing, and then they Voltron together into, a super robot. And then the socket itself just takes up the space that isn't taken up by the components themselves, which that actually makes it to where it's kittable. So now that I have a project, or I have a project that I'm trying to turn into a product, then we have to start dealing with the legal side of things. So in the US, we have an organization called the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. They're in charge of anything medical, anything, everything. So if I start building these for somebody, and I'm not a registered manufacturer of medical devices with proper licensure or clinic, then I'm looking at $100,000 per occurrence fine plus 10 years in federal prison. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just a run for money. So do a little thinking, figure out that DIY, if I'm doing it DIY and just supplying the parts, then you're doing for yourself and you can't really come back for me. So that's my current route that I'm going. Thankfully, I was invited to this event, and I was able to use the time here to go up to Glasgow to meet with Hugh Gilligan, but this time in real, in person, to get his real evaluation on it. He's like, more so on the legal side of things, because he spent 20 years within the industry. It's like, okay, how much trouble am I looking at getting into on this? Because I'm wanting to do it as a super slow rollout, so if there is an issue, I'm not immediately buried. So figure out it looks like it's going to work. So now I'm doing a small, very selective trial. If you've been donating on my Patreon, basically you're first in line. So that's kind of where I am now. Still do make the videos. It's turning into something that's really, it's going to be awesome. It's going to help a lot of people, and I think it's a super good use of my bonus time. I still have to do chemo every month, 9 hours, which kind of sucks, but that's the cost of doing business. So, but that's where I am. So we got questions?
Hello. There we go. Who's got a question? Perfect.
Hey. So this is, without a doubt, the most mechanically impressive thing I've ever seen in my life. How did it make you feel when you started making progress on this and you realized you had the chance to build something like this because of your knowledge and experience?
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I mean, like, so one of the things I deal with right now is with people that see me on the internet is managing their expectations of what they're going to be able to do. Because they see me do, pick up stuff just like your normal hand. It's super functional. But that doesn't mean that, you're going to be able to just immediately slap it on there and be able to, you're going to drop stuff. So, once you manage those expectations, it's awesome because, you're taking you're taking a portion of the 4 years of suck that you had and turning it into something that is going to just change someone's life. So like there's a local amputee that I do some work for. Won't mention his name, but he's a quad amputee. He got PID and sepsis. That's a blood clotting disorder. So went to bed just fine, got a little bit of food poisoning, whatever, woke up, hands and feet are black. Also he lost most of his nose, part of his lower jaw. He managed to keep his ears, but, transradial disarticulation on both sides, then had to have a revision. Lost both of his legs, mid femur. Totally destroyed his life. Well, his ONT got a hold of me because I had done his kids and Boy Scouts, and hey, I've got this guy could really use your help. He was a musician. First off, started off making him a set of guitar hands so he could play lap steel guitar. I guess that totally backed him off the cliff. Because, he went from a musician, 65 and sunny, to I'm a quad amputee. I don't go out because, my face is destroyed. So about a year later, his wife comes to me, hey, he's doing really good. Do you think we could have you help us out on some golf hands? And I'm like, well, let's give it a shot. So, when I first met him, he was just starting to get really used to his legs. So he wasn't like super stable or anything. So another year worth of practice on that, make him some golf hands. All of a sudden, in like 30 minutes of practice at the shop, he's able to dink a ball like 125 yards. Well, I mean, to you, to everybody with all your parts, 125 yards, thanks for playing. Dude's got no hands or feet, and he's boink, awesome. So, I mean, that has made it just 180'd his world. Given him, it's taken my situation and being able to help someone else like that, I mean, totally changed his world. Now, where they live, they abut a city park. So, he'll go in the backyard and just chip balls, and the dog will go get him and whatever. But just completely changed his outlook. Super awesome. And I'm hoping that I get the same result on the hands. Now, of course, it's a very selective disarticulation. It's full-length metacarpals, and it has to be that way because that's how the geometry of everything works. The longer this is, the more leverage you can generate, all of that. So you want this to be longer than that, because everything rotates and the fulcrum is through the wrist. So just part of the geometry, and that's kind of tough when you have to tell somebody, that's reached out to you, oh, I'd love to have one of your things, and you look at their pictures and their disarticulation's mid-metacarp, and you're like, you really aren't a viable candidate for this because you don't have enough residual limb. But for those that I am able to help, because it's like I've helped a guy he was amniotic band syndrome, index middle ring, natural pinky, natural thumb. So made him one, and it's working well for him. He isn't practicing enough with it. So I mean that also goes with the whole you're only going to be as good and as strong as you practice with it. Because where it is a mechanical device, if you can only forearm curl 40 pounds, you're only going to have that much strength in the device. So, that's where it comes into managing expectations. But, for the ones that I am able to help, it's amazing. It's super awesome. Yeah.
How do you account for building for people with smaller hands or larger hands? How do you account for the size of the mechanical hand that you're building?
Okay, so you have to fit within a general box. But, so say if your disarticulation, say if from the end of your metacarpal to the center of your wrist, if it is within, what would that be, a centimeter longer, shorter, or up or down of what I have this one set up, then it'll work for you. So within the device of the Gaffney, I've utilized a double eccentric that allows you to adjust quite a bit for different hand lengths. Now, hand thickness and residual limb thickness, you're limited to the height for the metacarpal base. But, the distance I have is pretty common for most adult hands. Now, this is an adult-only thing. It's not for children, because children is just going to be a legal nightmare. Because, to tell an adult, hey, don't XYZ, that's one thing. Tell a kid XYZ, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll do it anyways. Monkey bar falls off, Kramer versus Kramer moment all of a sudden there, and, now you're getting sued into oblivion, and you had nothing to do with it. So, did that get you? Okay.
Any more questions, guys?
In the purple in the back.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Do you ever get concerned doing stuff with electronics with metal fingers?
I'm sorry, I totally missed that.
Sorry. Do you ever get concerned working with electronics when doing stuff with your metal fingers, for example, if you'd shocked yourself or touching batteries?
So this is 100% mechanical, no batteries. And that is number one on the big list of must-haves.
I mean, if you were working with batteries.
Oh, if I'm
you were
working on
touching
it.
them and holding
Yeah,
them.
if you're welding, take it off. You're conductive now. As far as anything, yeah. I mean, you have to be careful. I mean, not so much in, well, I guess kind of in my case, you can't be trusted with your natural hands anyways. What makes you think you're going to be any better with artificial hands?
Any other questions, guys, for Ian? So, Ian, I have a question. How long did it actually take you from start to now in terms of a year's development for the product?
Okay, so in total, I started in 2018, and it's been a pretty much continuous iteration process from there. For this design, this series, I went from concept to wearing the first article in 4 months, which is amazing.
It's insane. It's
Yeah.
insane. And what tweaks have you got that you can share with us that you're going to be adapting to it in the future? What's the next step after in your head? What are you thinking about?
So the next real thing is bringing this into a product. Having something that is a project doesn't mean that it's a product. And so I have a manufacturer. They're a channel sponsor, PCBWay. They've agreed to print the parts that can be metal printed. I'm using SLA mag silicon aluminum for the process. So it's laser sintered magnesium silicon aluminum just for the durability, the lightness, the weight, and the cost. I could go with titanium, but that just increases your secondary process, your manufacturing process, costs and difficulty. Because, some of these threads they'd be like 1.5 mil by whatever. It's a 256 by 1 and a 172 thread. Convert that to metric. And then for drilling, if you did that out of titanium, while titanium is cool, it's much harder to post-manufacture. So that's why I've gone with the aluminum. And then they've started doing a machining service. So they'll be machining the individual component groups, and that's what makes it able to be a product that you can buy the individual component groups, and then as you go, as you get an assembly together, then you order the next piece,
Can we talk about the comfort of it as well? Because we spoke a bit before Ian did his talk. I was kind of asking what the materials are that are attached to the arms. If you want to tell the audience what you use, the comfort levels.
Sure. So Creality is a channel sponsor. They have what's called a Ferret 2. It's a non-contact 3D scanner. For this forearm cuff and for the socket too, I was able to scan my residual limb in a 4th axis rotary chamber, get a model. I cut the ends off in mesh mixer and printed a 3mm offset shell. Filled that with plaster Paris, actually hydrocal. Cut off that model and then did vacuum resin composites. So you do you coat it with a release. You coat the plaster of Paris with a release. Then you two layers of fabric. I usually use, a closed-end sock of some sort, a polyester or cotton, and then use, I think on this one I used 4 layers of fiberglass mesh roving, 2 more layers, and you do it all as a wet layup. Then you put it into a vacuum chamber. You can use, I found that you can use a food sealer. Food sealers work great for vacuum resin composites. So slide it in there, get your 30 inches of mercury, let it kick off for the 12 hours, 14 hours, whatever you're doing, and it gives you the scanning technology has come along so far with the software that, so I printed this at 98%, and it's an exact fit. So, that makes it awesome. Now, you probably go, well, why don't you just print everything out of plastic then? Well, plastic in the consumer grade level, even in the professional, SLA, like PA12 nylon, it just isn't a durable enough material for what we're doing here. And then also, printing is not machining. Printing is kind of it's about that shape and size dimension. Whereas on this type of thing, you need things to be within, not necessarily tenths of thousandths, but at least within 1 or 2 thousandths, just for a dimensional stack up and tolerance. So that's why I don't just release the files and everybody can print them on their bamboo X1 carbons, because it just doesn't work.
So we were talking again before the show that you can drive a car, you can grip a steering wheel, you can
Absolutely.
change your gear. What other types of activities can you do that would shock someone, say, you can't do that?
So I have a video I was on TikTok, picking up 110 pounds with it. I also have a video doing a pull-up with it. Not with this device, but archery. Just kind of really, I've gotten to the point really where I can kind of do most everything that I was able to do before, aside from the limitations from cancer, because you're still, you can't snowboard, you can't ski, you can't downhill mountain bike, you can't raft, you can't, there's a lot of can'ts to do with terminal cancer. So, but, you embrace the suck and, you just try to stay positive with it on what you can do, not so much, what you can't do. It's like, I had a kid the other day, can you do that? No. But how often do you actually do that and it's functional for doing something? Well, never. Then why would I build that into this?
Yeah. So the end goal, you want to sell a pack, right? So people can build it and use it for when they need. Is that right? So to sell, when we spoke before,
Yeah.
To buy, eventually people can buy them, right?
Yep.
I'm sure some people want an idea of cost.
Yeah.
How much would an end user be looking to spend approximately on getting one of these?
Okay, so that all depends upon your level of DIY. If you are comfortable filing and drilling and doing all of your own fitting, then it's not going to require a machinist. And with that, that'll probably save you about $6,000. But so all of the metal parts from PCBWay should be right around in the $3,000 to $3,500 range. You should be able to do an entire device, if you do it mostly yourself, in under $10,000. Which in prosthetics, my Osir iDigits was billed out at insurance for $85,000, and it resides on a wall because it's a terrible device. It's 1 second to open, 1 second to close, which is an eternity when you're actually trying to use it.
No, that's fantastic. It gives us a bit of an idea of price. Can you tell us how many, at home, Ian was telling me he's got a wall of hands. Tell us how many hands you have at home.
I have right around 16 hands mounted on the wall. It looks like a small, serial killers outside of my office. But each one of those is, it starts out life as, oh, my favorite child. I will love you forever. Then you start using it for a period of time. You get 6, 8, 10 months down the road, and you go, oh, I see all of your flaws. I've built a replacement on the wall with you. And then the next one, oh, I love you to death. You will be perfect.
Do you know what? I love that story. That's why I wanted to include it in your talk, because I just thought I just got that visual image of you choosing like whose turn is it today. Now we've got a few more people that have come and sat down, because obviously you are an incredible speaker and have an incredible story to tell. Are there any more questions before Ian finishes up? Yeah.
I was just curious about, would it be possible to die cast the aluminium? Because it's not a high melting temperature, would it be easier to die cast it to make it more...
So you could, but not for the cost. So for a metacarpal base to be printed out of mag silicon aluminum costs, and this isn't getting any great discount, it costs $30. So I mean, you can't even heat up the aluminum. And then if you were to do aluminum, then it's what type of impurities, you aren't getting any 6061 or any real graded aluminum out of that. Whereas this, you can go in and anneal it. Actually, if you were to anneal the SLS printed aluminum, I found that it almost doubles the strength than as printed, which is amazing. And then it's also, something with engineering is, the concept of only building it as strong as you need it to be. You could design and build this to where, you could pick up, it wouldn't yield at 1,000 pounds of load, but the rest of your arm would come off. So, you don't need to design something to be able to pick up that much, because you can't pick up that much. So, if you design it around the, 350 pounds, you ought to be plenty good, because all you need it to be is stronger than the rest of you.
Right, I want you to give him a huge round of applause. That's been absolutely fantastic.